Emma, written by Jane Austen, read by staff from Birmingham.
Emma by Jane Austen, read by the staff at Birmingham Libraries, Volume 3, Chapter 7. They had a very fine day for Box Hill, and all the other outward circumstances of arrangement, accommodation, and punctuality were in favour of a pleasant party. Mr. Weston directed the whole officiating safely between Hartfield and the vicarage, and everybody was in good time. Emma and Harriet went together, Miss Bates and her niece, with the Eltons, the gentleman on horseback. Mrs. Weston remained with Mr. Woodhouse. Nothing was wanting but to be happy when they got there. 7 miles were travelled in expectation of enjoyment, and everybody had a burst of admiration on first arriving. But in the general amount of the day there was deficiency. There was much a languor, of want of spirits, of want of union, which could not be got over. They separated too much into parties. The Eltons walked together. Mr. Knightley took charge of Miss Bates and Jane, and Emma and Harriet belonged to Frank Churchill. And Mr. Weston tried, in vain, to make them harmonise better. It seemed at first an accidental division, but it never materially varied. Mr. and Mrs. Elton, indeed, shewed no unwillingness to mix, and to be as agreeable as they could, but during the whole 2 hours that were spent on the hill, there seemed to be a principle of separation between the other parties, too strong for any fine prospects, or any cold coalition, or any cheerful Mr. Weston to remove. At first it was downright dullness to Emma. She had never seen Frank Churchill so silent and stupid. He said nothing worth hearing, looking without seeing, admiring without intelligence, listening without knowing what she said. While he was so dull, it was no wonder that Harriet could be dull likewise, and they were both insufferable. When they all sat down, it was better. To her taste, a great deal better, for Frank Churchill grew talkative and gay, making her his first object. Every distinguishing attention that could be paid was paid to her. To amuse her, and be agreeable in her eyes, seemed all that he cared for. And Emma, glad to be enlivened, not sorry to be flattened, was gay and easy too, and gave him all the friendly encouragement, the admission to be gallant, which she had ever given in first and the most animated period of their acquaintance, but which now, in her own estimation, meant nothing, though in the judgment of most people looking on it must have been such an appearance as no English word but flirtation could very well describe. Mr. Frank Churchill and Miss Woodhouse flirted together excessively. They were laying themselves open to that very phrase, and to be having it sent off in letter to Maple Grove by one lady, to Ireland by another. Not that Emma was gay and thoughtless from any real facility. It was rather because she felt less happy than she had expected. She laughed because she was disappointed, and though she liked him for his attentions, and thought them all, whether in friendship, admiration, or playfulness, extremely judicious, they were not winning back her heart. She still intended him for her friend. "How much I am obliged to you," he said, "for telling me to come today. If it had not been for you, I would certainly have lost all the happiness of this party. I had quite determined to go away again." "Yes, you were very cross, and I do not know what about, except that you were late for the best strawberries. I was a kinder friend than you deserved, but you were humble. You begged me hard to be commanded to come. Don't say I was cross. I was fatigued. The heat overcame me." "Is it hotter today?" "Not to my feelings. I am perfectly comfortable today." "Are you comfortable because you are under command?" "Your command? Yes." "Perhaps I intended you to say so, but I meant self-command. You had, somehow or other, broken bounds yesterday, and run away from your own management, but today you are got back again. And as I cannot be always with you, it is best to believe your temper under your own command rather than mine." "It comes to the same thing. I have no self-command without a motive. You order me whether you speak or not, and you can always be with me. You are always with me." "Dating from 3 o'clock yesterday, my perpetual influence could not begin earlier, or would you have not been so much out of humour before?" 3 o'clock yesterday? That is your date. I thought I had seen you first in February." "Your gallantry is really unanswerable, but," lowering her voice, "nobody speaks except ourselves, and is rather too much to be talking nonsense for the entertainment of 7 silent people. I say nothing of which I am ashamed, replied he, with lively impudence. I saw you first in February. Let everybody on the hill hear me, if they can. Let my accent swell to Mickleham on the side and Dorking on the other. I saw you first in February. And then, whispering, our companions are excessively stupid. What shall we do to rouse them? Any nonsense will serve. They shall talk. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ordered by Miss Woodhouse, who, wherever she is, presides, to say that she desires to know what you are all thinking of. Some laughed, and answered good-humoured. Miss Bates said a great deal. Mrs. Elton swelled at the idea of Mrs. Woodhouse presiding. Mr. Knightley's answers was the most distinct. Is Miss Woodhouse sure that she would like to hear what we are thinking of? Oh, no, no, cried Emma, laughing as carelessly as she could. Upon no account in the world. It is just the very last thing I would stand the brunt of just now. Let me hear anything rather than what you are all thinking of. I will not say quite all. There are 1 or 2, perhaps, glancing at Mr. Weston and Harriet, whose thoughts I might not be afraid of knowing. It is the sort of thing, cried Mrs. Elton emphatically, to which I should not have thought myself privileged to inquire into. Although perhaps as the chaperone of the party, I never was in any circle, exploring parties, young ladies, married women. Her mutterings were chiefly to her husband, and he murmured in reply, Very true, my love, very true. Exactly so. Indeed, quite unheard of. But some ladies say anything. Better pass it off as a joke. Everybody knows what is due to you. It will not do, whispered Frank to Emma. They are most of them affronted. I will attack them with more address. Ladies and gentlemen, I am ordered by Miss Woodhouse to say that she waives her rights of knowing exactly what you are all thinking of, and only requires something very entertaining from each of you in the general way. Here are 7 of you, besides myself, who she is pleased to say am very entertaining already, and she only demands from each of you either 1 thing very clever, be it prose or verse, original or repeated, or 2 things moderately clever, or 3 things very dull indeed, and she engages to laugh heartily at all of them. Oh, very well, exclaimed Mrs. Bates. Then I do not need to be uneasy. 3 things very dull indeed. That will just do for me, you know. I shall be sure to say 3 dull things as soon as ever I open my mouth, shall I? Looking around with the most good-humoured dependence on everybody's assent, do you not all think I shall? Emma could not resist. Ah, ma'am, there may be a difficulty. Pardon me, but you'll be limited as to the number, only 3 at once. Miss Bates, deceived by the mock ceremony of her manner, did not immediately catch her meaning, but when it burst on her it could not anger, though a slight blush shewed it could pain her. Ah, well, to be sure. Yes, I see what she means, turning to Mr. Knightley. And I will try and hold my tongue. I must make myself very disagreeable, or she would not have said such a thing to an old friend. I like your plan, cried Mr. Weston. Agreed, agreed. I will do my best. I am making a conundrum. How will a conundrum reckon? Low, I'm afraid, sir, very low, answered his son, but we shall be indulgent, especially to any one who leads the way. No, no, said Emma, it will not reckon low. A conundrum of Mr. Weston shall clear him, and his next neighbour. Come, sir, pray let me hear it. I doubt its being very clever myself, said Mr. Weston. It is too much a matter of fact. But here it is. What 2 letters of the alphabet are there that express perfection? What 2 letters express perfection? I am sure I do not know. Ah, you will never guess. You, to Emma, I am certain will never guess. I will tell you. M and A. M-ma. Do you understand? Understanding and gratification came together. It might be a little indifferent piece of wit, but Emma found a great deal to laugh at and enjoy in it, and so did Frank and Harriet. It did not seem to touch the rest of the party equally, and some looked very stupid about it, and Mr. Knightley gravely said, This explains the sort of clever thing that is wanted, and Mr. Weston has done very well for himself, but he must have knocked up everybody else. Perfection should not have come quite so soon. Oh, for myself, I protest, I must be excused, said Mrs. Elton. I really cannot attempt. I am not at all fond of the sort of thing. I had an acrostic once sent to me upon my own name, which I was not at all pleased with. I know who it came from, an abominable puppy. You know who I mean, nodding to her husband. These kind of things are very well at Christmas, when one is sitting round a fire, but quite out of place, in my opinion, when one is exploring about the country in summer. Miss Woodhouse must excuse me. I am not one of those who have witty things to say at everybody's service. I do not pretend to be a wit. I have a great deal of vivacity in my own way, but I must really be allowed to judge when I speak and when to hold my tongue. Pass us, if you please, Mr. Churchill. Pass Mr. E. Knightley, Jane, and myself. We have nothing clever to say, not one of us. Yes, yes, pray pass me, added her husband, with a sort of sneering consciousness. I have nothing to say that can entertain Miss Woodhouse or any other young lady. An old married man, quite good for nothing. Shall we walk, Augusta? With all my heart. I am really tired of exploring so long on one spot. Come, Jane, take my other arm. Jane declined it, however, and the husband and wife walked off. Happy couple, said Frank Churchill as soon as they were out of hearing. How well they suited one another. Very lucky marrying as they did upon an acquaintance formed only in a public place. They only knew each other, I think, for a few weeks in Bath. Particularly lucky, for as any real knowledge of a person's disposition that Bath or any public place can give, it is all nothing. There can be no knowledge. It is only by seeing women in their own homes, among their own set, just as they always are, that you can form any just judgment. Short of that, it is all guess and luck, and will generally be ill luck. How many a man has committed himself to a short acquaintance and ruined it the rest of his life? Miss Fairfax, who seldom spoke before, except among her own confederates, spoke now. Such things do occur, undoubtedly. She was stopped by a cough. Frank Churchill turned towards her to listen. You were speaking, he said gravely. She recovered her voice. I was only going to observe that though such unfortunate circumstances do sometimes occur both to men and women, I cannot imagine them to be very frequent. A hasty and imprudent attachment may arise, but there is generally time to recover from it afterwards. I would be understood to mean that there can be only weak, irresolvable characters, whose happiness must be always at the mercy of chance, who will suffer an unfortunate acquaintance to be an inconvenience and oppression forever. He made no answer, merely looked and bowed in submission, and soon afterwards said in a lively tone, Well, I have so little confidence in my own judgment that whenever I marry, I hope somebody would trust my wife for me. Will you, turning to Emma, will you trust my wife for me? I am sure I should like anybody fixed on by you. You provide for the family, you know, with a smile at his father. Find somebody for me. I am in no hurry. Adopt her, educate her, and make her like myself. By all means, if you can. Very well. I undertake the commission. You shall have a charming wife. She must be very lively and have hazel eyes. I care for nothing else. I should go abroad for a couple of years, and when I return I shall come to you for my wife, remember. Emma was in no danger of forgetting. It was a commission to touch her every favourite feeling. Would not Harriet be the very creature described? Hazel eyes excepting, 2 years might make her all that he wished. He might even have Harriet in his thoughts at the moment. Who can say? Referring the education to her seemed to imply it. Now, ma'am, said Jane to her aunt, shall we join Mrs. Elton? If you please, my dear, with all my heart. I am quite ready. I was ready to have gone with her, but this will do just as well. We shall soon overtake her. There she is. No, that's somebody else. It's one of the ladies in the Irish party, not at all like her. Well, I declare. They walked off, followed in half a minute by Mr. Knightley. Mr. Weston, his son, Emma and Harriet only remained, and the young man's spirits now rose to a pitch almost unpleasant. Even Emma grew tired at last of flattery and merriment, and wished herself walking quietly without any of the others, or sitting almost alone, and quite unattended to, in tranquil observation of the beautiful views beneath her. The appearances of servants looked out for them, to give notice of the carriages, was a joyful sight, and even the bustle of collecting and preparing to depart, and the solicitude of Mrs. Elton to have her carriage first, were gladly endured, in the prospect of a quiet drive home, which she was to close the very questionable enjoyments of this day of pleasure. Such another scheme, composed of so many ill-sorted people, she hoped never to be betrayed into again. While waiting for the carriage, she found Mr. Knightley by her side. He looked around as if to see if no one were near, and he said, Emma, I must once speak to you as I have been used to a privilege rather endured than allowed, perhaps, but I must still use it. I cannot see you acting wrong without a remonstrance. How could you be so unfeeling to Miss Bates? How could you be so insolent in your wit to a woman of her character, age, and situation? Emma, I had not thought it possible. Emma recollected, blushed, was sorry, but tried to laugh it off. Nay, how now could I help saying what I did? Nobody could have understood it. It was not so very bad. I dare say she did not understand me. I assure you she did. She felt your full meaning. She has talked of it since. I wish you could have heard how she talked of it, with what candour and generosity. I believe you could have heard her honouring your forbearance in being able to pay her such attentions as she was for ever receiving from yourself and your father when her society must be so irksome. Oh, cried Emma, I know there is not a better creature in the world, but you must allow that what is good and what is ridiculous are most unfortunately blended in her. They are blended, he said, I acknowledge, and were she so preposterous, I could allow much for the occasional prevalence of those ridiculous over the good. Were she a woman of fortune, I would leave every harmless absurdity to take its chance. I would not quarrel with you on it for any liberties on the manner. Were she your equal in situation, but, Emma, consider how far this is from being the case. She is poor, she is sunk from the comfort she was born to, and, if she live to an old age, must sink more. Her situation should secure your compassion. It was badly done indeed. You, whom she had known from an infant, whom she had seen grow up from a period when her notice was an honour, to have you now, in thoughtless spirits, and the pride of the moment, laugh at her, humble her, and before her niece too, and before others whom, many of whom, certainly some, would be entirely guided by your treatment of her. This is not pleasant to you, Emma, and it is very far from pleasant to me, and I will tell you truths while I can, satisfied with proving myself your friend by very faithful counsel, and trusting that you will some time or other do me greater justice than you can do now. While they talked, they were advancing towards the carriage. It was ready, and, before she could speak again, he had handed her in. He had misinterpreted the feelings which had kept her face averted and her tongue motionless. They were combined only of anger against herself, mortification, and deep concern. She had not been able to speak, and, on entering the carriage, sunk back for a moment overcome. Then, reproaching herself for having taken no leave, making no acknowledgment, parting in apparent sullenness, she looked out with voice and hand eager to shew her difference, but it was just too late. He had turned away, and the horses were in motion. She continued to look back, but in vain, and soon, with what appeared unusual speed, they were halfway down the hill, and everything left far behind. She was vexed beyond what could ever be expressed, almost beyond what she could conceal. Never had she felt so agitated, mortified, grieved at any circumstance in her life. She was most forcibly struck. The truth of this representation there was no denying. She felt it in her heart. How could she have been so brutal, so cruel to Miss Bates? How could she have exposed herself to such ill opinion in any one she valued? And how suffer him to leave her without saying one word of gratitude, of concurrence, of common kindness? Time did not compose her. As she reflected more, she seemed but to feel it more. She never had been so depressed. Happily, it was not necessary to speak. There was only Harriet, who seemed not in spirits herself, fagged and only willing to be silent, and Emma felt the tears running down her cheeks almost all the way home, without being at any trouble to check them, extraordinary as they were.
Emma, by Jane Austen, read by the staff of Birmingham Libraries, Book 3, Chapter 8. The wretchedness of a scheme to Box Hill was in Emma's thoughts all the evening. How it might be considered by the rest of the party she could not tell. They, in their different homes and their different ways, might be looking back on it with pleasure, but in her view it was a morning more completely misspent, more totally bare of rational satisfaction at the time, and more to be abhorred in recollection than any she had ever passed. A whole evening of backgammon with her father was felicity to it. There indeed lay real pleasure, for there she was giving up the sweetest hours of the 24 to his comfort, and feeling that, unmerited as might be the degree of his fond affection and confiding esteem, she could not, in her general conduct, be open to any severe reproach. As a daughter, she hoped she was not without a heart. She hoped no one could have said to her, "How could you be so unfeeling to your father?" I will tell you truths while I can. Miss Bates should never again, no, never. If attention, if future, could do away the past, she might hope to be forgiven. She had been often remiss. Her conscience told her so. Remiss perhaps more in thought than fact, scornful, ungracious. But it should be no more. In the warmth of true contrition, she would call upon her the very next morning, and it should be the beginning, on her side, of a regular, equal, kindly intercourse. She was just as determined when the morrow came, and went early, that nothing might prevent her. It was not unlikely, she thought, that she might see Mr. Knightley in her way, or perhaps he might come in while she were paying her visit. She had no objection. She would not be ashamed of the appearance of the penitence, so justly and truly hers. Her eyes were towards Donwell as she walked, but she saw him not. The ladies were all at home. She had never rejoiced at the sound before, nor ever before entered the passage, nor walked up the stairs with any wish of giving pleasure, but in conferring obligation, or of deriving it, except in subsequent ridicule. There was a bustle on her approach, a good deal of moving and talking. She heard Miss Bates's voice. Something was to be done in a hurry. The maid looked frightened and awkward, hoped she would be pleased to wait a moment, and then ushered her in too soon. The aunt and niece seemed both escaping into the adjoining room. Jane she had a distinct glimpse of, looking extremely ill, and before the door had shut on them, she heard Miss Bates saying, "Well, my dear, I shall say you are laid down upon the bed, and I am sure you are ill enough." Poor old Mrs. Bates, civil and humble as usual, looked as if she did not quite understand what was going on. "I am afraid Jane is not very well," said she, "but I do not know. They tell me she is well. I dare say my daughter will be here presently, Mrs. Woodhouse. I hope you find a chair. I wish Hetty had gone. I am very little able. Have you a chair, ma'am? Do you sit where you like? I am sure she will be here presently." Emma seriously hoped she would. She had a moment's fear of Miss Bates keeping away from her, but Miss Bates soon came, very happy and obliged. But Emma's conscience told her there was not the same cheerful volubility as before, less ease of look and manner. A very friendly inquiry after Miss Fairfax, she hoped, might lead the way to a return of old feelings. The touch seemed immediate. "Ah, Miss Woodhouse, how kind you are! I suppose you have heard, and are come to give us joy. This does not seem much like joy indeed in me," twinkled away a tear or two, "but it will be very trying for us to part with her after having had her so long, and she has a dreadful headache just now, writing all the morning. Such long letters, you know, to be written to Colonel Campbell and Mrs. Dixon." "My dear," said I, "you will blind yourself," for tears were in her eyes perpetually. "One cannot wonder. It is a great change, and though she is amazingly fortunate, such a situation I suppose as no young woman ever met with on first going out, do not think us ungrateful, Miss Woodhouse, for such surprising good fortune," again dispersing her tears. "But poor dear soul, if you were to see what a headache she has. When one is in great pain, you know, one cannot feel any blessing quite as it may deserve. She is as low as possible. To look at her, nobody would think how delighted and happy she is to have secured such a situation. You will excuse her not coming to you. She is not able. She has gone into her own room. I want her to lie down upon the bed." "My dear," said I shall say you are laid down upon the bed. But however, she is not. She is walking about the room. But now that she has written her letters, she shall soon be well. She will be extremely sorry to miss seeing you, Miss Woodhouse, but your kindness will excuse her. You were kept waiting at the door. I was quite ashamed, but somehow there was quite a little bustle, for it happened that we had not heard the knock. Until you were on the stairs, we did not know anybody was coming." "It is only Mrs. Cole," said I. "Depend upon it. Nobody else would come so early." "Well," said she, "it must be borne some time or other, and it may as well be now." But then Patty came in, and said it was you. "Oh," said I, "it is Miss Woodhouse. I am sure you will like to see her." I can see nobody, said she, and up she got and would go away, and that was what made us keep you waiting, and extremely sorry and ashamed we were. If you must go, my dear, said I, you must, and I will say you are laid down upon the bed. Emma was most sincerely interested. Her heart had been long growing kinder towards Jane, and this picture of her present sufferings acted as a cure of every former ungenerous suspicion, and left her nothing but pity. And the remembrance of the less just and less gentle sensations of the past obliged her to admit that Jane might very naturally resolve on seeing Mrs. Cole or any other steady friend, when she might not bear to see herself. She spoke as she felt, with earnest regret and solicitude, sincerely wishing that the circumstances which she collected from Miss Bates to be now actually determined on might be as much for Miss Fairfax's advantage and comfort as possible. It must be a severe trial to them all. She had understood it was to be delayed till Colonel Campbell's return. So very kind, replied Miss Bates, but you are always kind. There was no bearing such an always, and to break through her dreadful gratitude, Emma made the direct inquiry of, "Where, may I ask, is Miss Fairfax going?" "To Mrs. Smallridge, charming woman, most superior, to have the charge of her 3 little girls, delightful children. Impossible that any situation could be more replete with comfort, if we except perhaps Mrs. Suckling's own family and Mrs. Bragg's. But Mrs. Smallbridge is intimate with both, and in the same neighbourhood, lives only 4 miles from Maple Grove. Jane will be only 4 miles from Maple Grove. Mrs. Elton, I suppose, has been the person to whom Miss Fairfax owes—" "Yes, our good Mrs. Elton, the most indefatigable, true friend. She would not take a denial. She would not let Jane say no, for when Jane first heard of it, it was the day before yesterday, the very morning we were at Donwell. When Jane first heard of it, she was quite decided against accepting the offer, and for the reasons you mention. Exactly as you say, she had made up her mind to close with nothing till Colonel Campbell's return, and nothing should induce her to enter into any engagement at present. And so she told Mrs. Elton over and over again, and I am sure I had no more idea that she would change her mind. But that good Mrs. Elton, whose judgment never fails her, saw further than I did. It is not everybody that would have stood out in such a kind way as she did, and refused to take Jane's answer, but she positively declared she would not write any such denial yesterday as Jane wished she had. She would wait, and sure enough, yesterday evening it was all settled that Jane should go. Quite a surprise to me. I had not the least idea. Jane took Mrs. Elton aside and told her at once that upon thinking over the advantages of Mrs. Smallridge's situation, she had come to the resolution of accepting it. I did not know a word of it until it was all settled." "You spent the evening with Mrs. Elton?" "Yes, all of us. Mrs. Elton would have us come. It was settled so upon the hill when we were walking about with Mr. Knightley. 'You must all spend your evening with us,' said she. 'I positively must have you all come.'" "Mr. Knightley was there also, was he?" No, not Mr. Knightley. He declined it from the first, and though I would he would come because Mrs. Elton decided she would not let him off, he did not. But my mother and Jane and I were all there, and a very agreeable evening we had. Such kind friends, you know. Miss Woodhouse, one must always find agreeable, though everybody seemed rather fagged after the morning's party. Even pleasure, you know, is fatiguing, and I cannot say that any of them seemed very much to have enjoyed it. However, I shall always think it a very pleasant party, and feel extremely obliged to the kind friends who included me in it. Miss Fairfax, I suppose, though you were not aware of it, had been making up her mind the whole day?" "I dare say she had. Whenever the time may come, it must be unwelcome to her and all her friends, but I hope her engagement will have every alleviation that is possible. I mean, as to the character and manners of the family." "Thank you, dear Miss Woodhouse. Yes, indeed, there is everything in the world that can make her happy in it. Except the Sucklings and Braggs, there is not such another nursery establishment, so liberal and elegant in all Mrs. Elton's acquaintance. Mrs. Smallridge, a most delightful woman, a style of living almost equal to Maple Grove, and as to the children, except the little Sucklings and little Braggs, there is not such elegant sweet children anywhere. Jane will be treated with such regard and kindness. It will be nothing but pleasure, a life of pleasure. And her salary! I really cannot venture to name her salary to you, Miss Woodhouse. Even you, used as you are to great sums, could hardly believe that so much could be given a young person like Jane." "Ah, madam," cried Emma, "if other children are all like what I remember to have been myself, I should think 5 times the amount of what I ever yet heard named as a salary on such occasion dearly earned. You are so noble in your ideas. And when is Miss Fairfax to leave you?" Very soon indeed. That's the worst of it. Within a fortnight. Mrs. Smallridge is in a great hurry. My poor mother does not know how to bear it. So then I try to put it out of her thoughts and say, "Come, ma'am, do not let us think about it any more." Her friends must all be sorry to lose her, and will not Colonel and Mrs. Campbell be sorry to find that she has engaged herself before their return? Yes, Jane says she is sure they will, but yet this is such a situation as she cannot feel herself justified in declining. I was so astonished when she first told me what she had been saying to Mrs. Elton, and when Mrs. Elton at the same moment came congratulating me upon it. It was before tea. Stay, no, it could not be before tea, because we were just going to cards, and yet it was before tea, because I remember thinking... Oh, no, now I recollect, now I have it. Something happened before tea, but not that. Mr. Elton was called out of the room before tea. Old John Abdy's son wanted to speak with him. Poor old John. I have a great regard for him. He was a clerk to my poor father 27 years, and now, poor old man, he is bedridden, and very poorly with the rheumatic gout in his joints. I must go and see him today, and so will Jane, I am sure, if she gets out at all. And poor John's son came to talk to Mr. Elton about relief from the parish. He is very well to do himself, you know, being headman at the Crown, ostler, and every little thing of that sort. But still he cannot keep his father without some help. And so when Mr. Elton came back, he told us what John Ostler had been telling him, and then it came out about the chaise having been sent to the Randalls to take Mr. Frank Churchill to Richmond. That was what happened before. It was after tea that Jane spoke to Mrs. Elton. Mrs. Bates would hardly give Emma time to say how perfectly new this circumstance was to her, but as without supposing it possible that she could be ignorant of any of the particulars of Mr. Frank Churchill's going, she proceeded to give them all. It was of no consequences. What Mr. Elton had learned from the ostler in the subject, being the accumulation of the ostler's own knowledge and the knowledge of the servants at Randalls, was that a messenger had come over from Richmond soon after the return of the party from Box Hill, which messenger, however, had been no more than what was expected, and that Mr. Churchill had sent his nephew a few lines containing, upon the whole, a tolerable account of Mrs. Churchill, and only wishing him not to delay coming back beyond the next morning early, but that Mr. Frank Churchill, having resolved to go home directly without having waiting at all, and his horse seeming to have got a cold, Tom had been sent off immediately for the Crown chaise, and that Ostler had stood out and seen it pass by, the boy going a good pace and driving very steady. There was nothing in all this either to astonish or interest, and it caught Emma's attention only as it united with the subject which already engaged her mind. The contrast between Mrs. Churchill's importance in the world and Jane Fairfax's struck her. One was everything, the other nothing, and she sat musing on the difference of woman's destiny, and quite unconscious on what her eyes were fixed, till aroused by Miss Bates's saying, I see what are you thinking of, the pianoforte. What is to become of that? Very true. Poor dear Jane was talking of it just now. You must go, said she. You and I must part. You will have no business here. Let it stay, however, said she. Give it house room till Colonel Campbell comes back. I shall talk about it to him. He will settle for me. He will help me out of all my difficulties. And to this day I do believe she knows not whether it was his present or his daughter's. Now Emma was obliged to think of the pianoforte, and the remembrance of all her former fanciful and unfair conjectures was so little pleasing that she soon allowed herself to believe her visit had been long enough, and, with a repetition of everything that she could venture to say of the good wishes which she really felt, took leave.